I don't know how we do it, but we somehow found a new thing for us, Joey. A first for the podcast and another idea for the idea guy.
Oh, no doubt. I know you were just salivating this whole podcast. I mean, your shirt's all wet. It's crazy. It's almost like you need to be sent to an assisted living home. That's what I think.
What is I am not wet at all. I know I'm wearing a blue shirt, goober, but this thing's dry, bro. This I don't have that problem.
You're just elderly. I'm just saying, like, we need to take care of you. And I think today's guest, Chuck Bongiovanni, brought the heat with bringing in this new idea of turning a rental property into an assisted living residence.
Well, here's the thing about that, though. As you think about that, you go, okay, well, I've wanted to get into the assisted living space, which I have, by the way. I have a friend of mine that started investing in those years ago. And I've been like, dude, would you please let me in on that deal? And he's like, well, it's not my deal. It's this other group. I was like, would you please make the intro to those people? You know who you are. Would you freaking do it, man? All right. But this is different. This isn't like going and starting like a 100-door apartment complex that you turn into an assisted living facility. This is taking a 4-bedroom home with an attached garage and making it a 10 to 12 bed assisted living residence, which, by the way, based upon some of the federal housing laws, means that these things are operating in neighborhoods regardless of HOA, regardless of zoning, and regardless of neighbors, Joey.
Ooh.
And I have just got a sneaking suspicion that in this podcast, we start asking questions around a property that you and I bought about, 6-7 months ago with the idea of making it a corporate retreat. This might be an idea that you and I ask Chuck, can we do this with our home? Is this a fit? So whether you're a real estate investor looking to find ways to partner with franchisees, or maybe you're somebody looking to create a franchise, get in a business that's operating, Chuck breaks down both sides of the equation. Let's don't waste any more time. Let's jump into this interview with Chuck Bongiovanni.
Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
All right, Wealth Without Wall Street tribe, you're in for a treat today. Our guest is Mr. Chuck Bongiovanni with Majestic Residences. Chuck, so glad to have you here today.
I am ecstatic to be here today, guys.
Chuck, we've already had an amazing podcast that we just didn't even press play or didn't press record, I guess, on.
Should have, I know.
But I have no doubt that we're going to be able to level that up and redo, because this is an interesting concept for us for many reasons. Many of our listeners, they love the start of our podcast because I put somebody on the spot. I take them to a moment in time where they were dealing with a tough issue, but that tough issue is what gave them their start. I was reading about you online, and it looks like you had one of those moments where you had gone through foreclosure, you were dealing with the bankruptcy, and that led to a lot of things. But if you would, take us to that moment in time. What was going on where you were dealing with that, and what was going through your mind?
Sure. I was in graduate school, just got married, just had a baby boy, and then things kind of just fell apart. And I ended up, getting the house foreclosed on over, 2008 when the market crashed. I got divorced, unfortunately, but the great thing about it was I got full custody of my son. So he was 6 months old. So it was me, my son, and that was it. So I had no family out here in Arizona. So it was me, my son, and I had to do some quick strategic planning to make things happen.
And so with all of that, tell me a little bit about what led up to the foreclosure and bankruptcy. What got you to that point?
Oh, I got one of those great loans, those great loans where you just basically had to sign your name by it and stuff. And, I remember saying to myself, my house was only like $128,000 when I bought it. And I remember saying to myself, Chuck, if you had $128,000, you probably wouldn't loan it to yourself, So, being in grad school and then losing the other income with my wife, things just, tumbled from there. And then the interest rates went higher and it was crazy.
But the good news is that that's not where you were left, right? Something
Right.
had to change. You are now newly motivated with your son by your side. Tell us what was the next step from there.
The next step from there was like taking work very, very seriously. I had a son I had to take care of, and so I started a company. It was like a private practice first. I was a social worker in college, so I started this company where I helped people find assisted living, and didn't even think that it could grow, or expand much. And before I knew it, I had people calling me from other states saying, "Hey, I hear what you're doing. You're helping people find assisted living, and then when they move in, you're getting paid like a real estate agent." So I decided that it was probably a good idea to start franchising. So I did a lot of study of what franchising was, what the model was, and such. I got remarried and worked the business, worked our model really, really well, and started franchising. In a matter of 10, 15 years, we grew to 155 offices, 37 states, got the call from private equity. We sold in 2018 to a large private equity firm. And then I stayed on for a little bit. And in 2020 is when COVID hit. And I'm always one of those people that, look for crisis because there's always opportunity in crisis, and thought, there's a lot of residential care homes in the United States, but they're usually very, mom and pop. And I knew they'd have a hard time during COVID. So I started the Majestic Residences franchise, which is a franchise of residential assisted living homes. And it's been doing extremely well. We're already an international company 2 years later.
Explain for somebody who doesn't necessarily understand what an assisted living resident home even is.
Sure. Well, when you drive by some of these big assisted living places, Brookdale Senior Living is the largest in the nation. Sunrise is another one. These huge apartment-like places. Think of that, but think of a residential neighborhood with a regular house that's licensed by the state to take care of anywhere from 6 to 16 residents or seniors in that one home. So they're staffed 24/7, and it's a much more home-like environment than the bigger places that big apartments. They have to walk 1,000 feet just to get the dining room and such. So it's a much smaller, contained home that takes care of seniors.
And is this, you're obviously dealing with many different people. The way that we were introduced came from an idea of, hey, the real estate investors that are investors in general who are looking for opportunities might be able to go find one of these homes and potentially be the leaseor to one of your franchisees. Talk a little bit about where that idea came from and how that's been able to work.
Yeah, you know what? It came from McDonald's. Because we all know the McDonald's story, how they lease the property to franchisees and such. And that's where they make more revenue than they could have. We thought if we start talking to some investors, some real estate investors who normally buy, single family homes anyhow, rather than leasing them to a family who maybe will, leave at 3:00 in the morning with your refrigerator, maybe they'd like to lease into our franchisees on a long-term lease, triple net, get a really good return, and have a franchisor behind it to make sure that that person who is leasing their home as a franchisee is keeping it up to par and keeping it up in the tip-top shape.
So when you say keeping it up to tip-top shape, like what are the things that they're doing to that property on a regular basis, and what's that accountability look like?
Oh, landscaping, fixing any kind of repairs. If a senior has a wheelchair and bounces in the wall, they're fixing that immediately, because anytime the home has to be in perfect shape in order for, families to come take a look at it and make a decision whether they want mom or dad to be there. So us as a franchisor, also, we do video tours, with the owners to make sure the home is up to shape.
All right, so let's talk about, so that's the investor side, right? And well, first, I guess the only thing we didn't talk about there is what sort of opportunity is that for somebody who wanted to buy a property and lease it? You mentioned the state in which someone would care for it, but from a return perspective, like if I go buy a home and I'm going to turn around and lease it, what's the old adage that I want to try to get the 1% rule, right?
Yeah.
In the typical world. What does that look like for somebody in this sort of space?
Yeah, we're seeing the triple net with 1% is what we're seeing so far. What we're asking our investors, because there is a little time that our franchisee has before they get state licensed. So what we're asking the investor is, come up with one rate while they get licensed, another rate from month 1 to month 3 when they're starting their business after their license, and then a month 4 start with the premium 1% lease until 5 years. A lot of the franchisees have been asking for a possibility of a purchase option at year 5 or between year 3 and 5. We're seeing that too.
Awesome. So now shift gears for us and talk about what people are doing from the franchisee side when they're finding places to put these homes, but what are they getting? Like, what does that business look like from their perspective?
Sure. Well, we'll help them initially, help find a home and get state license. That takes, anywhere between, right now with COVID, anywhere between three and 6 months to get licensed. So sometimes the franchisee is converting the garage into 2 or 3 bedrooms. And most of the time they pick 1 bathroom in the home and they create like one big shower room. So they'll keep the commode, they'll take the sink and have a pedestal kind of sink, and then they will turn the rest of that whole room like into one big shower. So that's kind of what any kind of rehab is. It's not much. And then we will, once they get licensed, we'll be training them for operations, how to run the home, how to care for these people. A lot of the franchisees want to be passive, so they hire a state licensed manager or administrator, depends on the state what they call it. And then that licensed administrator or manager is the one who hires the caregivers, because it has to be staffed 24/7. They handle all the business, and the franchisee oversees that manager or that administrator. And our residents, depending on where they are, they're paying anywhere between $5,500 and $7,500 per month per resident to be part of that home, to be in there, to get the care. Okay,
so two questions. The administrator that you mentioned that is state licensed, is Majestic Residence helping to connect the dots between franchisees and these people, or is it something that the franchisee is on their own to find somebody like that?
Well, when you're with a franchise, you're never on your own. So we're coaching along the whole way of, there's schools that teach these kinds of things. So we're connecting the franchisees with those kind of organizations, and helping them see that if someone's unhappy where they currently are, maybe they'll be happy where, with you are. And just to get an idea, there's 30,000 of these homes across America right now. I can guarantee that unless you live in the middle of nowhere, there's probably one within a mile of you anywhere, any one of your listeners listening.
Wow.
This podcast is amazing. Almost too amazing, Russ. There's too many ideas, and I don't know where to get started creating passive income.
Well, here's the thing, Joey. I think one of the things you need to consider in that statement is, what is it costing you to not know? What is it costing you not to take action? I love the statement that says you don't have to be great to start. You just have to start to be great.
If you're struggling on where to start, you have to know what type of investor you are. Know your investor DNA. And if you want to learn more about this, you can join us in our Passport Challenge at wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/passport. Get started today.
So talk about the economics. You just kind of briefly mentioned how much the residents are paying per month per room. So I'm just envisioning, I've got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, just a ranch or whatever in a neighborhood. So you're thinking that 3-bedroom house, I can get 3 residents in, and they're paying, let's say on the low end, $5,500 a piece. So that's a almost, what is that, 16.5 that in revenue that person can receive from those residents?
Well, I can do you one better. Let's say you have a 4-bedroom home with an attached garage. We can convert the garage into 2 or 3 bedrooms. So now let's say you're at seven bedrooms. The master bedroom is usually always a semi-private for either husband and wife or 2 women. So now you're at 8. If you have another room in the home that's a little larger, make that a semi-private. You're at 9. I mean, any 4-bedroom home with a decent size living room or TV room or activity room can get up to 8 to 10 residents pretty easily. And they're paying anywhere between $5,500 and $7,500 per month. The biggest expense is your staff. Your staff is usually right now about 40 to 45% of your revenue. Food really isn't that much. Electricity and those kinds of things isn't really too much. You have insurance, of course, insurance in the home, but also professional liability insurance to cover you in case of any accidents and such.
So what is the margin that you kind of talked about 40 to 45% for labor? Obviously you've got typical overhead as well as the rent lease. What are your franchisees seeing once they're established a year in, they got full 100% occupancy? What sort of margin are they getting? 10%, 20%?
And here's the problem. The FTC has rules of what we can say and what we can't say.
Okay.
So they can talk to any of our franchisees, and I know they'll be very happy with that answer.
Okay. All right. Well, I had to ask. I mean, here's where I'm going.
Russ, I wish you could come right out and just tell you.
Yeah. No, I understand. And you don't want to provide an answer that one is not able to be backed up. Every scenario is different. I mean, imagine Joey running a business without me.
Totally.
It would not have near the girth that we've been able to create off of that. We would have 6 listeners instead of 10. I mean, it's just, it's amazing. All right. So here's where I'm going with this. And I think the stallion knows where I'm going with this is
I know what you're stepping in.
I'm very curious of this model. And we alluded to this prior to us pressing record, is that Joey and I bought a house. Our audience is well familiar. We bought a house with the intention of turning it into a corporate retreat short-term rental. It's actually in the neighborhood in which I live in, Chuck. It's a very quiet neighborhood. There's only 13 homeowners in the neighborhood. This house sits on 8 acres, has access to about a 20-acre little pond, lake, whatever you want to say.
Wait, I saw a movie. Was it called The Money Pit? Was that something like that?
and Joey and I are looking right now to figure out how do we take this property and use it. But I mean, in my mind, I'm hearing your idea and I'm going, man, I would love to rent it because my neighborhood says I can rent it as long as it's for 12 months or longer. But the city told Joey and I that you can't run a business out of your house. And it seems like this would be a business. So what would prevent cities from, hammering down on people who try to operate this out of a house?
Okay, so I'm going to make your day here. There's a little law. It's a real small one. It's called the Federal Fair Housing Act. And you can't discriminate.
That's not little at all.
So you can't discriminate against a protected population, and seniors are one of them. So we have never seen an HOA be able to stop a residential care home from opening. Now, what they can do is mandate you keep the garage door on, for appearances and such. And that's pretty easy. You just put a fake wall up and, make egresses from the other sides of the garage. But no, they can't stop a residential care home from opening.
So under that, so usually the fair housing law, you're saying they're not running a business. What there are is they just have 8 people staying in it. Is there any limitations to how many people can be in a house? Can the HOA or the city say, well, this isn't we said this was a single family home area and you're running basically a multi-family home area and that's commercial and we don't have that?
Sure. The city can mandate how many beds you can have. The smallest we've ever seen is 6 beds. So normally, we're looking from 6 to 16 beds is a good range between all the states of what they allow.
Okay.
All right. So what are we missing, Chuck? I mean, basically, Russ wants to go ahead and pull the trigger and rent this house out to one of your franchisees. Like, what are we missing? What's the downside?
Wow, we're still growing. So, there's not going to be a guarantee that I'm going to have a franchisee looking specifically in your area, your city. So, I mean, honestly, that's just the only downside I see. I mean, right now we wanted to make sure we had a lot of franchisees who getting out of the corporate world. And sometimes when they want to go and get like an SBA loan, the SBA wants to see a little bit more experience. So these guys are working corporate jobs. They're not working assisted living at all. So that's why some of them have been looking for these lease opportunities so they can get the experience behind them. And then they can buy house number 2, 3, 4, and 5 with an SBA loan once they have that experience.
Okay. Well, let's just say somebody who's local to us is I'm looking for an opportunity. I've been trying to figure out, is it land flipping? Is it short-term rental? Is it e-commerce? They're trying to figure out what's that pathway outside of what they're doing. And they say, oh, well, does that mean I might be able to be a franchisee and I partner up with Russ and Joey? I'll lease their house and I'll run this franchise. As a franchisee, what's the requirement of them? Like from what does their typical day look like? Are they working 40, 60-hour work weeks, or what's it look like for a franchisee?
Yeah, a typical franchisee is, like I said, they hire a really good manager or administrator. Maybe in the very beginning, maybe 10 to 12 hours a week. As it's up and running, much less than that. They can, I've franchisees who are like doing 5 hours a week, and that really is just checking in with that manager, maybe stopping at the house, every other day, just making their presence known to the employees and the administrator. I have one franchisee who's operating 4 of them right now, and his day is just, he has a really good administrator, so his day is just checking in with his administrator and saying what's going on with the homes. Oh, there's a plumbing problem in one. I'll make a phone call. So they're really overseeing. We don't want our franchisees in the home doing caregiving. They can't grow their business that way.
And what is an ideal? I mean, obviously, I'm asking the guy selling franchises, what is the ideal number of franchises that one would want to have in order to make a decent living? Yeah. And the answer is 1 million. But what's the next best answer? 3 to 5 homes is probably the best for them, because what happens with home 2 and 3 is you get to spread out that administrator's salary. So instead of in one home, now you're split it among 3. You may pay him or her a little bit more, because they're overseeing 3 homes, but they're not. You don't have it all in one home.
And is there a max like per administrator? Like you see, it's a 5, pretty much the sweet spot where then you have to start kind of adding on additional administrators. Yeah,
some states have requirements as far as. Some states say we don't care how many homes they manage as long as they're all within X amount of radius of each other, diameter of each other. Some do set limits for number of homes that they can oversee.
All right. Okay. So let's play a game of Ask Chuck. Is our house a good house? You guys ready for this? All right. So Chuck, we have a house that's a 6-bedroom. It has a main floor with 2 bedrooms on one end, big master on the other, humongous kitchen, humongous living room, humongous dining room. We have upstairs with 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Downstairs, we have 2 large rooms down there that we would call bedrooms as we're selling the house. But the reality is one is a big, huge bedroom with a suite, and the other is just this massive area. And then in between those, another huge, massive living space. So it's about 6,000 square foot. It,
Gotcha.
Is up to date. It's a beautiful home. We're listed at 1.495 right now. Tell us what.
It has a pool and it's on a lake. You forgot that part.
Yeah. It's super quiet neighborhood. Is our house a good house for this idea?
Unless that specific house is located in an alligator infested swamp, I'd say 100% yes. That's perfect, because that 6-bedroom home is what you're describing. You know, we're talking easily 12 to 15 residents in that house.
Wow.
Wow.
12 to 15 residents paying $5,500 to $7,500 per month. And this franchisee went up and running would pay roughly 1% to at rent rate, right, Joey? What's the math on that for me?
Roughly $15,000 a month.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, and for, let's say 12 people, 15 people, let's say 15, you know, you're looking at 3 caregivers during the day, 3 in the evening, 1 overnight, 24/7 care. 12 beds, you could get away with, 2 caregivers as long as a lot of the residents are, somewhat healthy. 2 during the day, 2 in the evening, and 1 at night also. So, you know, like I said, your caregiver is about 45% of your overall revenue costs, shall we say.
And here's, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask this question, which is the morbid question of the deal. What is the average stay of a tenant?
18 months.
18 months. And what is the average time to fill the bed once that tenant is no longer there?
Our homes right now are under 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Under 2 weeks, yeah.
Wow. So like they have like basically a waiting list to get in.
Yeah, I mean, our homes are they're very high tech and they're very different than all the other homes around us. So once we have an opening, word gets out that we have an opening, and we start getting calls pretty quickly.
When you say high tech, what does that mean?
Oh man, this is really cool. Let me tell you something. We have this exclusive technology that we're the only residential homes in the nation that can use it. It uses radio wave technology to determine when an adult brief is wet or soiled, and then it alerts the caregiver immediately. So, you know, families may be worried about, you know, mom sitting in a wet brief for hours. This thing identifies it literally in seconds. It lets the caregiver know that, you know, there's been an accident, so the caregiver can get in there and, change mom or dad really quickly.
Gotcha.
We use scent technology, which is really kind of cool. We worked with some chemists that said, the residents in your home, what do you want them to feel like when they're with you? And we said we want them to feel safe and secure. So they created a scent which stimulates parts of the brain, and that gets pumped into our air conditioners throughout the homes. And this is just a few of the technologies that we're using. And when families come and see that, they're like, wow. And that's why we're getting anywhere between $500 and $1,500 more per month per resident than any of the homes that are around us.
Interesting. That is. Do you feel like this space in any way is saturated? Like, where do you feel like the market's going in relationship to this? Where's the demand as compared to the supply?
Sure. 10,000 seniors per day. I mean, 10,000 people per day are turning 65 and older. Basically, I can tell you that no matter what the economy is, it can't slow aging. Baby boomers are getting to that age. Our average resident's about 84 years old. Okay. And as soon as that wave diminishes for the people in that cohort, so we're looking at the next 20, 25 years of solid growth. I'll put it this way. California has about 8,000 of these homes. And they're actually thinking about raising the number of residents that can be in a home. Right now, California is 6, and they're considering raising it to 8 because of the demand.
So where does someone go who's interested in this to find out what is their city or state law guidelines to how many beds can be in a home?
Yeah, we'll help them through that whole process.
Okay.
We walk them through it all. And that's it's www.discovermajesticresidences.com.
All right.
Even in the investors, they can go there. There's a form called Start the Journey. They can tell us if they're interested in being a franchisee or if they want to investigate being a real estate investor. Either way, you'll get us on the phone talking with you and working with you on those goals.
Super interesting.
Wow. Well, I know that you've got Russ's brain turning, which is not hard to do. It's kind of a simple mind. But man, I really appreciate you coming, being a part of the show and sharing. This is the first time we've had somebody speak on this particular subject, but we know it's a growing industry, as you just mentioned here in the last few minutes. Besides discover majesticresidence.com, is there any other point that we need to make for people to connect with you?
That's usually the best one, because they'll start getting some videos from us. They'll be invited to some webinars. We want to make sure that our potential franchisees are fully informed before they make a decision and before we make a decision on them. We have a pretty lengthy due diligence process, about 6 to 8 weeks of a process of getting to know each other, finding what each other's values are and goals are, to make sure we're awarding franchises to franchisees who will be successful, and also people that we feel comfortable with, connecting them with real estate investors also.
Nice. Joey, I think what you meant to say, I didn't have lots of other things up there boggling and standing in the way of those ideas from moving around. So
exactly.
I got you. Well, man, it was so great to have you on the show today, Chuck. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to this episode and walking down this path with us. I know you're interested. Are we going to try to rent our house or are we going to try to become a franchisee? You're going to have to stick around for another day to figure out what the answer to that is. But as always, we thank you for listening. Have an amazing day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.